A man is accused of decapitating his parents and the family dog, and then is caught by police after allegedly fleeing away in a golf cart, and it all ends in shots being fired. We break down this bizarre and macabre case with forensic psychiatrist Dr. Daniel Bober. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. So if you follow us here on Sidebar, it's really no secret that we discuss some very, very, very brutal crime scenes. And in each one, my heart goes out to law enforcement, who have to be the ones to come face to face with these truly horrific environments. But what about this one? Out in San Juan Capistrano, it's about 10 miles away from Laguna Beach in California. Just before 7:35 in the morning, police respond to a domestic violence report at a mobile home, and they discover 79-year-old Antoinette Gerdvil and 77-year-old Tonod Walter Gerdvil and their dog, all dead. The couple mutilated. And all three, including the dog, decapitated. Again, imagine walking into this scene right in the morning. The Orange County Sheriff described the scene as very difficult and complex. And now, to make matters even more nuts, you know who authorities arrested for these heinous killings? The couple's son, 41-year-old Joseph Brandon Gerdvil. Right after police respond to this heinous scene, they are radioed that a bloody male in the area apparently chased down a maintenance worker and wound up stealing his golf cart and took off. A sheriff's deputy ends up catching up with this guy about 1.5 miles from the home. And while the circumstances of what went down are not entirely clear at this point, the deputy reportedly ends up shooting Gerdvil. Gerdvil's taken to the hospital. He survives. He was in stable condition. And then he was taken to the sheriff's office, the sheriff's jail, and he was booked on homicide charges. Although it is very possible he will be hit with additional and even more enhanced charges. So with that, given this limited information, I want to bring in right now forensic psychiatrist Dr. Daniel Bober to try to make sense of this. Dr. Bober, thanks for coming on. I know we don't know a lot about this, but apparently he had been living with his family, and this is not the first time I have seen an adult living with his parents ending up doing this. Have you seen it in your practice?
Yes, and I've certainly heard about it too. And when you look at the savagery and the brutality of this crime, there has to be something between him and the parents in terms of a history. Now, why is he an adult? Why is he living with his parents? It doesn't mean that every adult that lives with their parents is dysfunctional. But I would obviously want to know a lot more about his background. I'd want to know about the history leading up to this event. Had there been prior episodes of violence? When I look at the brutality of this, it's so primal, it's so animalistic. It reminds me of a crime many years ago in South Florida where someone actually ate off someone's face and they thought that it was attributed to bath salts. So I think about things like amphetamines, bath salts, cocaine, cannabis, something that could induce psychosis, or maybe it was something that just boiled over between them, but it's as up close and personal as you can get and as brutal as you can possibly think of. So there had to be something that really just caused him to boil over and do this.
Look, I know this is a horrifying story, but it is a story that we think is important for you to hear about. And we're able to bring you these kinds of stories because of the support we get from our sponsors. And I want to call one out right now, Noble Gold. So look, if you're worried about the future of the economy, this could be the company for you. With so much uncertainty these days, it's natural to worry about the security of your retirement savings. But there is one asset that stands the test of time. You guessed it, gold. For centuries, gold has been a hedge against market volatility and economic instability. By rolling over your existing IRA or 401k into a self-directed gold IRA, you can enjoy the potential for long-term growth and stability. Diversify your portfolio with a tangible asset that has real value. And setting up your gold IRA has never been easier with Noble Gold Investment's streamlined process and expert guidance. And right now, Noble Gold will give you a 10-ounce silver American flag bar if you open a qualified account. So go to lawandcrimegold.com now. That's lawandcrimegold.com, or you can call them at 877-646-5347. Mention Law and Crime. There's always a risk risk of investment, and no guarantee of any kind. And that act of decapitation or severing someone's limbs, which unfortunately we've covered at Law&Crime before, that takes time. It's not easy to do. So to have the wherewithal to actually do that is something to consider. Now, I will tell you, although police have not indicated any motive, they haven't established a motive at this point, it has been reported that a neighbor witnessed Gerdvil arguing with his father and got up in his face just the day before the killings. And then another neighbor said that Gerdvil had a possible substance abuse problem, and that's why he was staying with his family. So, doctor, if we take that as true, that kind of goes in a little bit to what you were saying.
Well, that was the first thing I thought of. I thought of some sort of substance-induced psychotic episode. And you're right, this is not just punching someone in the face or shooting them with a gun. It's something that takes time and some level of patience to get done. And so I think there may have been some departure from reality or some impairment in reality testing combined with just absolute blind rage that caused this to happen.
Just to focus on that for a second, someone can be in a psychotic state induced by some sort of substance where they don't realize what they're doing, the act of decapitation, they don't even realize that they're killing someone, or does it make the process easier for them? I know that's a kind of a difficult question, but trying to understand if someone was on a certain kind of substance, what kind of substance could that be? And B, which scenario sounds more realistic?
So you can be sure that this nuance is something that his attorneys are going to have to work out. It's not a defense to be intoxicated on a substance and commit a crime. There are substances that can induce a psychosis, which is separate and distinct from that intoxication that may be used as a defense, for example, in the insanity defense. But simply being intoxicated on substances is not going to be a defense. And yes, it is possible that under the influence of a substance, you may not know the difference between right and wrong, but it's not going to be able to be used as an insanity defense.
Sure, right, because there's voluntary intoxication.
Exactly.
That would never be a defense because everybody would just say, oh, I got drunk and committed a crime.
I had a few drinks. Right.
Right, or I got high. But let me ask you, but again, going back to this idea, because I'm just trying to understand how someone can, look, we've covered cases before where people are not on substances and they go through with it. They go through with decapitation. So assuming for a moment, and we'll get into this again, but assuming somebody is on a substance, just to clarify this, do they not realize what they're doing, the act of what they're doing? Not even saying it was wrong or not, but they don't even realize, they might, and I know this might sound simplistic, they might not realize that they're cutting into another human being or even the dog. They might think they're doing something else. Is that the most severe example? Have you seen examples of that?
Under the influence of a substance, and I probably see this, probably a couple times a month, that someone is so psychotic and so detached from reality that they have absolutely no idea what they're doing. And that could be cutting off someone's head. That could be running down a highway naked, and they're just totally in their own world and they don't realize what's going on. Yes, that is possible.
Now, talk to me about the fact, let's say substances were not a part of this, and he, take the allegations as true, killed his family, killed the family dog, decapitated them. That act, I've spoken with other mental health professionals who have said, in order to do that, there needs to be a separation, that the person doesn't look at their family members as people anymore. They look at them as objects.
That's absolutely true.
Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. To do something like that, you would have to almost separate them from the human race and look at them as objects. Or alternatively, there is so much rage, it just boils over, and that you actually take pleasure in some way in doing it. Now, the dog, of course, that kind of hits me hard because I'm a dog person. So maybe the dog had a special relationship with the parents. Maybe they really loved the dog and they were attached, which we can assume. And maybe he felt by doing that, that was hurting them even more. But again, there has to be a history. If this is not drug related, there has to be some history there where this level of resentment and rage had built up over time. And then finally, one day, like a volcano, it simply erupted if it's not drug related.
And by the way, why an insanity defense or some sort of, intoxication defense wouldn't work is because, and I think one of the key factors here, he allegedly ran away. He allegedly grabbed a maintenance cart and got out of there because there are
That's right.
cases where he commits a crime, sits there, police show up, and he says, "Oh, what are you guys doing here?" Right? Like, what's going on? So I think the fact of
So
fleeing
those are
is
some
a
of the
big
things
part.
exactly like you said that we look at. Did they attempt to flee? Did they attempt to conceal the crime? These are all things that show consciousness of guilt, which would again go against an insanity defense.
I want your opinion on this as well. Again, still early in the investigation, still early in trying to understand who Mr. Gerdvil is. But the Daily Mail has reported that Gerdvil had posted a number of seemingly erratic messages online about Jehovah's Witnesses, that there was this kind of weird music he was posting. There was even a picture that he posted, or allegedly posted, of the Pope being hanged. When you look at somebody's online history, what does that tell you?
So again, is this an ongoing psychotic process? Is this something that was induced by substances? You know, we're looking at paranoid, religious, grandiose delusions. I have a patient right now, today, actually, before we got on this broadcast, that I was dealing with. Again, very similar, thought he was being followed by the CIA, very paranoid, aggressive. So again, it just really depends what is in his mind and what is causing it, whether it be an organic psychosis or something that's induced by substances.
Well, let me ask you about this. As this case progresses, what would your role be in it? And what kind of, when would a forensic psychiatrist be called in? Would they be called in by the prosecution? Would they be called in by the defense? Would there be two different evaluations of him? And how does it work from that point of view? And let me ask you this. If you did have the opportunity to interview Mr. Gerdvil, what would you ask? How would you conduct that interview?
Oh, I mean, it would be probably multiple visits with him for several hours at a time, going through his complete history of medical problems, history of substance use, history of prior psychiatric contacts, whether that be inpatient or outpatient, his family history, his school history, his work history, really getting a full picture of who he is and what led up to these events. That's what I would do. And I can guarantee you that there are going to be mental health experts appointed on this case, and it's going to be a battle of the experts at the end of the day.
And I would imagine the first step would try to see if he's competent to stand trial after kind of something like this, right?
Exactly.
My gosh, what a case. It's one of those headlines that kind of shocks you, and reading about it shocked me. Dr. Daniel Bober, thanks so much for coming on and trying to make sense of things that really you can't make sense of, but appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure, as always.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.